talked about the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. They don't come out and say it's 100% sure this is going to happen at this time. They've come out over the last 2 or 3 reports going from, well, we're 85% sure this is going to happen, to where now they're saying we're 95% sure this is going to happen. And when they come out with the report this year, any bets that that's now 98% sure this is going to happen. Okay? So you're still dealing with uncertainty, but as you move up that 90%, 95%, are you willing to spend more on insurance? You don't know that your camera is going to be stolen, but you have insurance. You don't know you're going to get a car accident, but you buy insurance. Okay? Now, we don't know exactly what's going to happen to the jet stream or the conveyor belt in the ocean when the climate changes, but should we be buying some insurance for those worst case scenarios? An example of insurance is after Hurricane Sandy, Governor Cuomo in New York is buying up the property of the people's homes that were damaged or destroyed along the coast, so that we no longer have a home that is, you step out the door and you're 2 feet from the ocean. Right? So they're now getting this undeveloped space. If you look at the Oregon coast, they have all of the coastline is state property. So very little that was grandfathered in was developed right on the coast. All right, dealing with imperfect knowledge, we can use what's called the precautionary principle or the safe minimum standards. And this is guidelines for making regulation. Precautionary principle, where environmental consequences of regulatory inaction are in some way uncertain or ambiguous, but non-negligible, then inaction is unjustified. Right? So if you know something's going to happen, just because you don't know it with certainty, that's not a reason to do nothing. And this is a difference. If you look at regulations in the EU, they go by the precautionary principle, prove to us that it's not going to be harm. In the US, prove to us that it is harmful. So you have a very different concept, burden of proof, as to justifying regulations. Safe minimum standard, is there some level of exposure that is safe? Okay? Can you breathe in a certain amount of asbestos without getting asbestosis? Right? So it's a constrained approach to this policy where you say, here's the standard, you can't go beyond that. So you have some safe minimum standard. Now different countries, different agencies use these in different, to different degrees. Precautionary principle is very much a European standard. We do use the safe minimum standard here. Generally, it's problematic. But all right, policy options. How do economists look at regulations? First, command and control. That's where you just come in de facto. You can't emit any more pollution. All right. Market-based incentives. That's where we try to provide incentives for people to change production techniques, to use greener products, things like that. So we can have some price-based incentives or quantity-based incentives. Price bases, taxes, subsidies, charges, fees, deposit refunds. You go to some stage, you buy a drink here. You buy a 6-pack of Coke, they're going to charge you a deposit on those bottles. Okay? So these are all using prices. Australia just passed last year a carbon tax to try to get people to pay for carbon emissions so that it becomes less desirable to emit carbon. Quantity-based instruments are the cap and trade, quotas, offsets. Cap and trade, as I said, in about an hour we'll do a little game to see how it works. But the nice thing about cap and trade is it does take, this will be the number of permits, and it gives a hard line. You cannot emit any more than that. Right? So this becomes the supply of permits, and then it allows businesses to determine what the price will be. So this is price. So you have something like this where this gives a safe minimum standard. Right? We're going to allow 20 million tons of carbon to be emitted in California. People that want to emit carbon will bid on those permits. And that's what the game will be that we play. Then information, labeling, property rights, etc. Right? An example of labeling here in California, Prop 65. Anybody ever go buy sand for a sandbox for the kids or anything like that? Or you're walking in the grocery section looking to buy broccoli? You'll see a warning label that says Prop 65, this product may be carcinogen, right? This may cause cancer.
You'll see it by water fountains. You'll go into crystal stores where they sell crystal, like baccarat, whatever, and
It's in Starbucks.
Hmm?
It's in Starbucks.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, well that's a quick tour of economics and sustainability.
Have you guys had economics? Some of you have and some of you haven't. Okay.
Any of the terms, something?
For those of you that have had economics, have any of the terms that Wade has talked about sound familiar? Do they sort of bring back
Some great memories.
So just a couple, this is sort of starting out with just a couple definitions. I'm not going to teach you guys or talk about marketing as a whole. There's just not enough time to do that here. So what I want to do is just focus on a small aspect of marketing, which is the consumer, which is a very important part, because we market because of consumers. Okay, we have this whole institution because of consumers. So basically, consumers, consumption is a set of activities or experiences that includes buying, using, and disposing of. Okay, traditionally marketing looked at buying and using. They didn't look at disposal. And so what we do is we look at disposal when you start talking about sustainability. What do you do with the products that you've used? Even the services, what do you do with them? Can you recycle them? Can you reuse them? Can what you dispose of then become an input into another product? So you recycle a can, that aluminum then becomes input into another product that then is sold and used. So consumers are motivated by needs and wants. Very similar to what Wade said in terms of from an economic perspective. We just distinguish in marketing and consumer psychology, we really distinguish between needs and wants. And I'll talk a little bit. Have you guys talked about in your courses Maslow's hierarchy of needs? So you know the concept of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So we're looking at different, a pyramid, so I'll talk a little bit about that. So in marketing, we distinguish between what people need and what people want. And what you want may not necessarily be what you need to have, okay? So sustainable consumption is the ability of consumers to meet these needs without impacting the ability of others to meet their needs now and in the future. This is the definition that we use in marketing when we talk about sustainability. This sounds very familiar, right? Doesn't it sound just about almost similar to what you heard from Wade or what you've heard all along in this class? So successful sustainable marketing is the sale of a product which the consumer uses, their motivation, knowledge, and resources to use, reuse, and dispose of. So we're going to talk about different examples of what we do in marketing to encourage people to engage in sustainable behavior. So some of the things I put an article, a short article on your beach board that talks about Carrot Mob. Have you guys heard about Carrot Mob? You can actually go in and you can Google Carrot Mob. It's a very